Welcome to Evolving Ideas. My name is ELAINE SMITHA. This show is dedicated to new and innovative concepts, and I like that because it's very exciting and it gives us cutting-edge information so that we can grow and evolve. My show today is starting off with a very wonderful gentleman, Duncan Cameron, who was a participant in the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk project. And it's rather a bizarre life that he's been leading, and yet he's willing to come and share some of this information with us about his involvement in this. So welcome to my show, Duncan.
Yeah, it's well to be here.
Duncan, can you give us some information about the role that you played in this project? Do you want to refer to it more as a Montauk involvement, or do you feel your connection with the Philadelphia experiment is rather a...
It's just, my connection is more of, for one reason or another, being kind of hooked into all this kind of experimentation. Excuse me. I haven't quite dug out all the information, but it seems that I kind of fit in with all these kind of weird, unusual experimentations of sort. There are, in these kind of complex, criminally brilliant experimentations, there are ways to contact people in order to have them come forth and volunteer their duties, which is kind of a curious and interesting way to have people come forth and perform a duty for which the person or the group would care to have done, which is bordering on certainly in intrusion into the mind and the body and such. But there's the other side of it, which is that someone who has not yet contained themselves or has not yet gone to a defense mode, which all living beings have that birthright to defend. It's a birthright. It's a tree or a form, an animal, or much of anything has that right to defend. It's inherent there. So a person who is, let's say, weak, and I don't mean to demean the weak, but it's a learning process that everyone has to come forth and say, it's a recognition within their own selves, saying, I stand for this, I will, and for basic forms, which as a collective we're learning to do.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, I was weak, and I put that in quotes. I had a sympathy and an empathy into all these kind of bizarre connections for reasons known and unknown,
mm-hmm.
and got pulled in and did as I was requested to do.
Mm-hmm. So what we're really talking about is taking an individual who perhaps has a lower will threshold,
Sure.
and utilizing their minds for somebody else's purposes,
Right,
which
right.
is a form of manipulation.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure.
And so since the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk project were both government, military, experimental programs in dimensional mind, time travel, psychic phenomena, in other words, using people's minds to create energetic fields to accomplish certain feats that a certain group of people wanted to have done.
Oh, yes.
So for the viewers who are just now tuning in, the Philadelphia experiment was a project where the USS Eldridge was to disappear, supposedly only radar-wise, in the Philadelphia harbor, ended up being totally invulnerable to the visible spectrum. So, and what you were involved with was this travel between 1943 and 1983, and going through a time tunnel and ending up in 1983. And if we look at the movie, I don't know how accurate that is, but Duncan was one of those individuals who did that and ended up going into hyperspace, ending up in a desert in Norfolk, or was that in Las Vegas?
It wasn't. It was a desert, but it was in Montauk Point.
It was at Montauk Point. So the movie is not exactly accurate.
Well, it's a bit Hollywoodized, and the love interest, it kind of creates, movie things.
And that wasn't involved at all.
Maybe it was. I'd like to recall that.
So Duncan's memory is a little bit sparse in some areas.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
Could you address that kind of that experience?
Yeah, but I think I'm going to jump back a little bit to what you're saying about the Philadelphia experiment, which I've been trying to figure out how to express it, and somehow you've come forth with a little initiation, little push of sort to get me going on it. what I opened with about the different parts of the mind being vulnerable, the technology since the 40s, and however in the secret sector within some of the industrial, but those confined to the only for the few, so to speak, the technology was so advanced, certainly into the 80s. Preston Nichols may have more information. I know there was research from the Philadelphia experiment in the 40s into something called the Phoenix Project. The investigation into how the psyche, the psychological part, and the physical and non-physical mind work into all sorts of different things, electromagnetics, energy. There's a ton of different considerations, how the DNA strand works. Anything that can be resonated with frequency can be adjusted and sympathized and empathized with. So the technology became so sophisticated in the 80s, 70s, and 80s that they were able to how to explain this? I'm digging this. This is a little troublesome because I'm trying to...
No, you're doing fine.
With this, and it's been troubling me, so this is very good.
Oh, great. So we're having...
This is good. Yeah, this is
I'm glad to be a facilitator for that.
Right, so they had the technique and the brilliance to do what we all do metaphysically.
Exactly.
Technologically.
Yes, that's amazing.
The incarnation, the consideration of different life forms, not only life forms, but different life functions, whether human or however otherwise, whether a person's highly connected into the earth or otherwise. But what they did in my case is because I was so part of this overall connection into kind of the weird experimentation, they actually took the essence out of myself, different body, in 1983, which had come through from 1943, and installed me in this body. Father, second time around, same father.
Yes.
To grow up, be groomed to run the equipment in Montauk Point in 1983, to bring myself in Al Bielek, I should say Edward Cameron, a.k.a. Al Bielek these days, from the 40s.
It's amazing. We have
messing with the metaphysical kind of standard spiritual stuff that we all kind of do, maybe not naturally, but that the processing of moving in different spaces, subtly they were doing with brute force and predatorial consequences of sorts.
Really pushing it to its limits.
Oh, sure.
So what we have come to understand as really being intuitive and being able to stretch ourselves psychically, where many people feel that that's just a little border, well, they're not so sure that they want to get involved in that, and yet we all have that inherently born within us. It's native to us. Yeah. And what your experience was that they actually took that force and pressed it to its limit for their own personal gain, and pressed it and forced it and utilized all those capabilities that are natural to us, but just pressing it and forcing it to its limit.
Yeah, and also the same sense of the word, we all force and stress different parts of ourselves every day.
Well, that's true.
It's just an extension of all our vulnerability, weaknesses, and strengths that we have as humans that they just understood, categorized, digitized, put in all these psychoactive machinery to record, and then fed back to the person in order to gain different aspects within the mind to do the work for which they cared to have done. Cared is the wrong word. I would like to have wanted is better. Word.
Wanted is a stronger word.
It's a more beeline sort of thing.
Do you think that some of the psychoactive drugs that are so prevalent in our world today are attempts at some level to to do something to the brain in order to, that's a form of manipulation too, because they can be programmed to do things that they wouldn't do in their conscious state.
Right. Yeah, I was part of my training. This goes back in other government experimentations and different projects. They used all sorts of. They started with the psychological approach. Some of their call from Vietnam. They'd send fellas in just to see what would happen. They send them into radiation field, low radiation, high radiation field with tactical news, just to see what happened to them. just on paper, okay, oh, this is interesting. We lost 25 people because we had this rate here. Kind of really bizarre.
It's really sick.
Really sick type thing. But again, I keep going back to this. They were just taking the extension part of all we have. We all have that kind of sick, weird, distorted side of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Amplified, it's a beast. That's what they did, is just take everything, the human spirit, or connection to the spirit, amplify it and do work.
So, if I'm understanding you correctly, Duncan, all of these things that we are hearing about in the news, where people are going out and, say, shooting up kids in the schoolyard, that's an amplification of an aspect that's within all of us, but they have played, somehow that aspect has been played upon and pushed it to its height so that that person is so obsessed with doing that particular act that nothing else is on their mind.
Well, yeah, well done. And different parts of it. This is something that my experience was working into different parts of the mind.
Exactly.
The mind is so complex. And the extension, not only earth plane, the emotional stuff, the prospect metaphysically of going off the earth plane and the connection we have to multifaceted reality zones, different life functions, forms, it's so immense, just on paper, on the subtle form, let alone amplified.
It's mind-boggling, which is really what it is.
It was remarkable that way that those minds on paper, the logistical, mental, heady type of people, had enough to do on paper to say, we're going to do this, this, and in that sense, a number of people were pulled in who like that sort of thing, like that stimulation, that mental fence playing, the sword buckling sort of thing. It's just, it's a play, it's a game sort of thing. So I'm sure that it would just make sense.
How did you get involved in this in the first place? Well, were you a young person, a young buck, and you just had capabilities and they pulled you off the street kind of thing, or did you take certain tests that qualified you, or what was the...
There's some other things which I'm not yet ready to come out with.
Okay.
It just doesn't seem appropriate in nature.
Okay.
But I was, just to overview it sort of thing, I was susceptible to a lot of the psychological investigation and working within it.
That's high intuitive.
Yeah, it could be thought of that way. But of course, in that same sense of the word, children naturally are that.
They are until it's trained out of them.
And it also actually works into, of course, getting out of Montauk and getting rid of some programming of some sort, and then come to conscious awareness that, yes, indeed, I was part of a lot of different things, experimentation, then realized, wait a second, started looking at energy fields and realizing I'm sensitive to it. And of course, as I now understand, everything can be reduced. Reduce is the wrong word.
Well, that's a good term. It's okay. You can reduce it to frequencies.
Yeah, but could be perceived at, because it's perception. How it reflects into this reality, and our perception is based in education, that sort of thing.
And everyone views life through their own perception, so that's how we can say that everyone has the truth, because that particular truth is their truth.
Yeah, okay.
And the true truths, if you were to say there were really truths, those are really more of nature. In the way, those are things that are dependable.
Yeah, right.
But when we're looking at your perception, my perception, Preston's impression, even Al Bielig's, all of us, as we look at things, we each have our own viewpoint, which is our perception of how things really are. And so that's how we can change from one form to another, by simply shifting our perception.
It reminds me of something that Calvin and Hobbes, it's a comic strip. Calvin was, I forget, he was out building the snowman, I think it was, and he's going through all this remarkable philosophy about doing this and values and such, and he ended up saying, well, it was just, perception of values. It's what's right and wrong.
Exactly.
It's the different camps. It was remarkably brilliant in that sense. This little kid certainly is. But it was fascinating that way.
Well, I think just to complete this thought is that if we were to say that each individual has their own truth through their own perception, then we'd have to say that everyone is right in terms of their own viewpoint. You know, I mean, if you adopt something through your own perception, you believe it as it is for yourself, which becomes your truth, which makes you right according to your own truth, which I think is kind of interesting. But to get into this a little bit more, one of the things that we've heard a lot about in terms of New Age attaining some level of higher consciousness, and certainly the Eastern modality deals with this a lot, is dealing with this Kundalini energy or this chakra energy. And that was one of the tools that you were involved with in order to reach a hyperspatial dimension that allowed you to travel to Mars and to take the corridor, the time travel corridor tunnel to get there so that you could perceive what was there. So I know that you had a lot of experiences in that regard, and I don't really expect you to go through all of that, but perhaps you might just give us your impressions about your experience.
Actually, most of my experience was through sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
The actual physical moving from one place to another is so instantaneous, and sometimes it occurs before the process starts. Everything is continuously happening at the same time. And I put that in quotes. It's perception.
Exactly.
In the space-time field and the different forms of intelligence, everything is continuing at the same processing station. Mm-hmm. It's there. It's all concurrently happening. Mm-hmm. So the individualized time spent doing that is just kind of minuscule. Mm-hmm. My time was spent in trance, away from conscious part of the mind. So where I was then considered through training to have a susceptibility to work through sexuality. A number of reasons I haven't quite dug out on that, but
I'm sure.
It doesn't make a difference, whatever the format was. So they use that vulnerability, in my sense, to send to the different parts of the mind, and I went in kind of volunteering for these sexual experimentations.
Mm-hmm. So you volunteered for this?
This is logistical. I don't know quite. I haven't dug that out, but it possibly could fit. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. But so it's a how do I say? Just a second. Okay. Okay. Right. Just lost the train of thought for a second. The vulnerability into the weakness of sexuality. Mm-hmm. So I would be in a trance state, whereby the conscious part of the mind was set aside. When I first worked into Montauk, I was kind of waving the flag, and had been in some of the other intelligence parts of the government, and went in there thinking that I could do something worthwhile. Again, it's just any organization, any format of intelligence has its directive and goal towards something. And if you get in and you're part of the crew,
you're gung-ho, ready to go,
and the enthusiasm is there, and trusting. Mm-hmm. That's the big thing.
Trusting that everything, that you're being utilized for the good of mankind.
And that everything is fine, God is wonderful, everything will take, again.
And nobody would do anything to you that would harm you or anybody else.
It's the birthright of all living forms to defend.
Yes.
It's inherent, it's there. So unless that's incorporated well, a person will just kind of go and, oh yes, however the format. So then, as I say, the conscious mind was set aside, and they worked down into the primitive part of a person's physical connection to the energetic, to the spiritual part of themselves off Earth plane. We came in on sexual energy, I should say, I need to clarify that. The spirit was attracted to the sexual, the high dynamic ability, ever-changing, dynamic, evolving, I put that in quotes, part of the sexual act, and certainly part of the DNA procreation thing, which we're all registered. And
right,
all,
exactly.
You know, it's there.
Yes,
and
it's inherent. It's inherent.
So
Not natural drive.
Sure. So in that sense, they used that form in me to get off Earth plane, realizing, I guess, since they had all this sophisticated, not only equipment in technology, but all these adept, sensitive psychics, empaths, who I'm sure on some level thought they were doing the right thing, or were entrained, or for whatever reason.
Or whatever,
It makes a difference.
yeah.
However, they served a purpose, and it seemed that I was kind of hooked up, or had interest, or sympathy, or empathy to a kind of this stuff, this kind of out there stuff, more than the average person.
Yes.
And of course, everyone has that.
Yes.
It's subtle, but it's there. It's part of our own.
Well, my understanding about the orgasm, that it is in the theta range of frequency, which is a very vulnerable state, because if we're looking at delta, theta, beta, and alpha in terms of the ranges of awareness, delta being our sleep, theta being very close but very vulnerable, and our beta is what we're sitting right here talking, and alpha, of course, is a lower, like a meditative state. So in theta, you're very vulnerable to programming. So that's why it has been said that when you are having sex with someone, you better be sure that you really like that person, because if their energy is negative, you will absorb that, and it will affect your mind in a very vulnerable state, which sounds like what has happened with you is that when you were in that stage, you were in theta, and therefore they could utilize that energy in order to send you places and for you to do things, because it was impinging upon that level of energy.
That makes sense. It feels right. Also, it reminds me very quickly here of I do some volunteer work for a youth enrichment service. Very light duty for sure. Mostly to try to get back to connection to the adolescent part of me, which I love.
Yes.
And it's it's very pure, it's light, it's free flowing, and it's kind of fun.
Not too demanding.
Not too demanding. It's very easy that way. So one of the instructors there, or not instructors, guidance counselors, or lack of a better word, she always had this queer twinge about her. And of course, this is the past few years when I'm able to look into and then analyze energy fields to get a feel for it, so to speak. And there was an interest to her, and initially you think it's sexual, but you discard that. It's one of those things you say, attracted to the person. No, that's somebody. And then realizing her frequency did not move up and down with Earth. Everyone has a connection to Earth frequency. They rise up and down. It's a natural occurring.
Yes.
Preston has information on the lymph system and the lymphatic flush, how necessary it is to be connected to the Earth. And he's got all sorts of different things on that. Which he was locked in on maybe 6 hertz, 6.5 hertz. Just on frequency, 6.5 hertz. There is something to the 666 thing.
Oh, interesting.
It is. She got locked into the kind of the dead energies. How else to explain? Yeah, the dead energies is good. The waste product, not only the mind of the body, and she was locked into it, and she was obviously terribly upset. If you had this thing sitting down like you, physically, metaphysically, spiritually, the whole thing, she had all sorts of trouble in her operations with her sexual region and all sorts of different things, and she had lost that natural connection to the Earth going up and down the frequency, which that 6 hertz at the time. Now Earth frequency has changed. Preston and I have all sorts of information on that, but it's not necessarily for now. That she wasn't graduating, going up to the higher frequency, letting loose the waste product naturally occurring, and then going back down, the high point, letting it go and coming back down and retrieving those dead energies, waste, body, and mind, picking it up naturally that we all do, and coming up with frequency of the Earth to let it go.
Interesting.
So it was an eye-opener to me, and a lot of different saying, well, there is something to this other than just perception, because it was, there she was upset, and everyone, it was remarkable.
So what you're saying is that when you connect with nature, that your biorhythm increases to a degree where you are able to release things that are troublesome to you.
Yes, and also there are many different levels of Earth frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
If you start going to the artificial ones, this is a bit of a misnomer, and it's not very soothing information, but there are ways to send to the Earth frequencies, which I was involved in order to change things in the direction for which a person has a connection to the Earth to the outside, which is, possibly through the Akashic, to direct things as certain forms, intelligence, being would care to have us. So in that sense, it's all kind of intertwined here, and interesting and kind of sad too, all in one.
So when when you're saying the 666, there's something to that. We've heard from the religious community and some of the booklets, and I know sometimes I get flyers, and there's people who are talking about that 666 having, there seems to be different attributes given to this 666, and now
Right.
You're entertaining one I haven't heard of. Can you explain what you're talking about there?
Typically, as of, 3 or 4 months ago, Earth frequency used to go from 6 to 9 hertz, something like that. I'm more echoing Preston's information.
Mm-hmm.
It's somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay.
There's a fluctuation just in temperature that we all have. There's some fluctuation for sure. I'm sorry, what was the question? I lost my train of thought.
About connecting to nature and the 666 and how that relates to us. And is there any biblical connection with that?
I'm out of league on that.
But
what I can say is that it's a necessary format to collect the waste product as a collection agency, a waste dump product, so to speak, to say, okay, let's all sit there and get it going. Here's the waste disposal site. Let's put it all
just
in there.
Put it all in there.
Put it all,
get rid of
it
it.
in, and then close it up, and then take it very nicely and just let it go.
All
right, open the trap door, and then you say, oh, here's the waste disposal. It's kind of supercilious, but it does have its necessity.
It
It's
does.
part of
It's part of life.
Sure.
It is. It's very interesting.
So it's in that sense, on reflection, it's very necessary. And of course, if a person's either locked into the discord of the waste product, or an extreme sense, that everything is fine and wonderful. God is there. They're an extension of the two, and it reminds me of Rudyard Kipling's "If." If you can keep your head when all about you, losing theirs and blame it on you. If you can trust your doubts from all men doubt you. It goes on, and it talks about the two extremes being, I forget the word, but it was kind of wonderful that way. This is one of my favorites. So, however, I got a smile out of it, so it's worth it.
That's wonderful. That's really great. Well, I'd like for you to talk to us a little bit about your trip to Mars, because so many people think that you can't get to Mars, and Mars is a dead planet.
Yeah.
And
it's funny. I was ready to bail out when you said that. Also because I'm not feeling well. I'm just going to, a couple 3 minutes. I'm just going to go rest and have Preston come on real quick.
Okay.
Basically, I was sent there through a recorded sexual trance. The actual time tunnel was built out of sexuality.
Interesting.
Anyone, I can't say anyone, poor choice of word, but a person looks down into their energetic core, and if for reasons, if I had the virtual function, I could then prescribe it to you and then show it to you. Which this is more Al Bielik's information that we were trained down in Chesapeake, in VR, which is virtual reality.
Virtual reality, which is now what they're trying to give us on television.
I don't know, but I know that I have the capability. It's certainly been squashed, that I can perceive. That's part of my trouble now, is being so open. I was trained to go in and then perceive all, which I put that in quotes because it's what was necessary for the work duties at the time. In other words, to be able to be projected not only in thought but in physical, to be here and then certainly be in trance and work into the part of the mind that perceived all, that we all have again. It's a naturally occurring thing to then be here, perceive, come back, and report.
But you did go to Mars.
Oh, sure.
Physically.
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure. So not a problem.
Oh, no. I mean, everyone has a connection to there is a resonance between planets, spheres, and spheres. And just on paper, you can go from, sphere to sphere, and planets, you can jump planets.
You just plan it and do it.
Yeah, it sounds kind of corny, but there was also different reasons to try and acquire information of what I later learned from digging into information was I was sent there to turn off the planetary defense system. Apparently was all.
And this was an underground base, is that correct?
It would seem as such. Again, it's a feel. I didn't go there and say, "Oh gosh, here we are, welcome to Mars." We got the lights and the Burger King off the side. I was like, "I'll grab a quick burger."
Oh right.
But so,
a Mars burger.
Mars burger. So, in that sense, it's a perception, and this is what a number of us kind of dug out. Again, it goes back to feeling, the feel of what something is. You pick up something through education of sort, but there's also that intuitive or just knowing part of the mind, again, that we all have, that just knows. It's a very simple understanding.
Yes, but a planetary defense system?
That's what we figured out, and it was my duty to be projected in there after the projection go in the physical, to just go and feel all these, what I call different stations. There were, I don't know, I still can't quite get it, 153 to 157 different stations.
Amazing.
And it was kind of like a shoe. What did I say last time? A shoehorn? Horseshoe. Horseshoe arrangement. Kind of sort of a cavern thing, and many different reflection points, some kind of almost religious in nature. Other were sounds and colors.
Religious or spiritual?
Oh yeah, well said. Yeah, spiritual. Right. So it was my duty to go in there and perceive and come back. Again, I was projected there on the part of the mind that had no conscious awareness. The information that I dug out was after coming out of Montauk and going through meeting Preston Nichols, and Preston had some techniques in order to relieve the encumbrance of different parts of the mind to hold information. And of course, naturally, a trauma we all will bury. It's a wonderful part of the mind to take away from the conscious. It's a service. But when it sits there and it starts packing up, just like the waste product that gets, the container gets full, you say, okay, it starts coming up the surface, and then you just go like this, and all of a sudden you have to deal with it. Through necessity and logic. There's all sorts of physical, mental, a whole different considerations. What are you seeing on my head?
No, I'm just...
Things sparking up or something? or am I going out of town again?
I don't know.
Oh, God, there it goes. It's going to Mars. Quick, ground them.
Well, I think that people think that there's never been any life on Mars, and what you're really telling us is that, yes, indeed, there has been life on Mars.
In the sense there seemed to be an intelligence form which then had the understanding and directive to build something or to form, maybe that's a better word, something or other which had the interest of the control group, and they thought it was important.
So would you say it was high-tech?
It was probably the exact opposite.
Oh, is that right?
It would seem so. I'm now perceiving, because it was at times it was like going through gentle air.
For heaven's sake.
Very subtle forms of things. Nothing these is, I don't know, I'm extremely so like this piston going up and down, and it seems that in this reality, the combustible engine, everything's explosion.
Yes.
Which is,
Yes.
It seemed to be the other sense of the word, the other form, not the other form, the extreme of combustion.
That's amazing. That brings to mind our sense of other realities, other planetary bodies, other planetary beings, as being technologically so far advanced from where we are. And I think there's been a sense that if we went to Mars, would we find high technology, or would we find a very ancient kind of technology? You see, but I think we always think, well, if we can go there, then they have the technology. Theirs is better. I mean, it's like the grass is greener on the other side of the fence.
Yeah, the old day. Right.
Yes, so I think what you're telling me, if I understand you correctly, is that it was a very different energy that you encountered.
Yeah, well said. Thank you.
A much more gentle energy, much more subtle energy, and more spiritual. And
Yeah, okay.
and so they
Sure.
had some guidelines there with this energetic field that you went to. So but I don't quite yet understand that planetary defense system, but
Nor do I.
but nevertheless, it just seems like perhaps Mars is a place where life was very different in that moment. That is, say, the antithesis of where we are today here on planet Earth, and that it may have been a stopping off place for other entities, but the fact that it's very gentle would lead us to a whole other paradigm of realities that's quite the polarity of what we're experiencing here on Earth.
Yeah, there's something that comes to mind, which I'll go through quickly, and then I'll be off to the races, so to speak.
All right.
The mentality for which they used the entrance into, I was not the only one, but I was used for reasons not known, yes and no, most of the time. They used through the sexual base core energy, which is kind of the survival primitive drive that we all
Exactly.
have for procreation, for back in caveman days when there was the brain size was not yet developed, and all sorts of considerations. Metaphysically, we were there, just existing.
Exactly.
The part of the intelligence of the, if I understand this is my viewpoint on it, part of the caveman mentality is that the actual spirit was not installed in the initial cavemen early. It was the actual body that was then adjusted, presented there by, however, it's certainly not by chance, by design, to some capacity, and that the body was the spirit. The housing, it was the core, it was here.
The temple of God.
Nothing else. It was right here. It was down in. And then through some sort of evolution, and maybe that's a poor choice. Evolution, yeah, because evolution just means changing with whatever process is occurring at the time. It doesn't mean evolution is more evolving, but it just means to change.
Yes.
Yeah, as you probably well know. She says I could tell you all. So that basic core of the sexual drive is primitive, and in that sense of mentality, not only on paper but a reflection part of that mind, it will go and it's predatorial. It will then go and acquire
To conquer.
the weak.
To conquer.
It's a logical, not only logical, it's inherent. That animal mentality. It's in nature. It's there, and they were using that to go and get. Feline is just sort of there's food there. I'll get.
Yes.
It's simple.
Yes. Pavlov's.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. Well, I think the greatest tenet that comes out of this conquering is to really conquer ourselves. That is the greatest.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's makes sense. Feels good.
Well, Duncan, I'd like to thank you very much for joining me on this segment of Evolving Ideas and sharing your vast knowledge with us. And
well, I'd like to thank you for thanking me.
Would that you could stay longer with us so we could go into
fun.
some more depth. But I know our viewers are going to really be so grateful that you were able to share some of your thoughts and experiences with them.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's always kind of nice to come over to the West Coast. We both, Preston and myself, come from New York area, and of course it's a very compressed sort of thing, but we have certain things necessary to do, yet with Montauk and different other investigations, so it's kind of nice to come out to different country and, of course, get on the airplane, and, of course, energetically, the aura drags. And when you're not only in the plane, but a car, so it's a way to get away from yourself. Really, vacation from yourself, so it's swell.
Yes.
So it's good that way.
Excellent. You can go into Alpha.
Heck yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
thank you.
appreciate it.
Okay. Well,
Bye,
we'll
thanks.
talk with you another time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We're back now with our guest, Preston Nichols, who has been very much involved with the Montauk Project, and Duncan Cameron just left us and shared of his knowledge. So we're going to continue the remainder of the program with Preston. And one of the things, Preston, that Duncan brought up was about the lymph system and the lymph flush. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, it started when I was trying to figure out how to help Duncan get over his water problems, what actually turned out. And we discovered that a lymphatic flush of the body is triggered by a slew of ELF frequencies.
Really? That's interesting. How does that happen?
Well, apparently, Dr. W.O. Schumann, way back when, discovered that the Earth goes through a cycle of electromagnetic ringing, anywhere from 6 hertz to 9 hertz, depending upon where the sun in relation to the atmosphere is. If the Earth is here, the atmosphere is around the Earth. It's not distributed evenly. The sun pushes the atmosphere down in the side that's closest to the planet, and away from the planet, the atmosphere is away from the planet.
Oh, that would make sense.
So as the planet rotates, the atmosphere becomes close down in the daytime and far up at night. That's why at night, old shortwave, or HF as it's probably known as, will skip all over the planet.
That's why you can hear stations all over.
The ionosphere is much higher. This forms a cavity, a resonant space. Each time a lightning strike goes through, or any other energetic functions, it causes this cavity to ring like the air in an organ pipe rings.
Really?
Now, apparently, there's a sensitivity in the biological functions to this frequency, and as the frequency slews between night and day, this triggers a lymphatic flush of the human system.
That's very interesting. So collectively, say a whole society would have this experience? Amazing.
Twice a day.
Twice a day. Interesting. Well, I was not aware of that. And that's between 6 and 9 hertz? And is that at particular periods during the day?
Yeah, it is. It's fastest switching when the sun is reaching the horizon. This is the danger of using one of these blip boxes, or what's known as a Tesla watch, which creates a constant 8 hertz background. You don't get your lymphatic flush.
Oh, for heaven's
Because
sake.
now your body is synchronizing to that new reference frequency.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I had not heard that. So you would say at dawn and at dusk are the
You have
periods
a lymphatic flush.
Amazing. Well, that's new knowledge for us. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, another thing that I would like to have you discuss is what's happening since 1983 with the Montauk project.
Well, in 83, the project was crashed. It was down. 87, actually 86, they decided to restart the project again. By 87, there was maintenance contracts issued to refurbish the underground facility. By about 88 to 89, the underground facility went back on the air, so to speak, and they're active, fully active today, and they are transmitting a pulse transmission almost constantly, starting at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and going until maybe 6 in the morning, through the evening and the night. This transmission is much slower than what is necessary for human consciousness intrusion. It appears that they're going in and working on a consciousness which is slower. Not slower being dumb, but it processes information at a much slower rate. Now, typically, the larger the being is, the slower rate it processes information. Because the information processing rate is dependent upon the lifespan of the being.
So are you saying that it would not be the young, it would be the older?
No, it appears to be Earth itself that they're actually transmitting to at this point.
I see. Okay.
We thought for a while, and we still believe it, that they're transmitting to the Earth through the animal consciousness, which of course is a much slower consciousness.
I see.
Metaphysicians believe that the Earth and animals share a common soul.
Oh,
And
interesting.
that you can affect the Earth consciousness through the animal consciousness.
Interesting. I've heard that there is some kind of effort being done to slow down the biorhythm of the Earth to prevent a lot of these Earth changes from occurring. Do you think?
Highly possible.
Do you think that this is, in essence, an effort in that regard?
Well, the government is very afraid of the Earth changes because they know of the Marshall belts, which the New Age calls the photon belt.
Now, why don't you tell us, our viewers, a little bit about that?
Well, the Marshall belt is a zone which spacecraft, Earth, other heavenly bodies can go into, which appears to be a very, very high energetic zone. I'm told by people inside NASA that when satellites and space capsules go into that zone, their metal is almost torn apart from the amount of energy or electricity or magnetism that's in this zone. Now, there's a little known fact that comes out of quantum physics that says there's two states of light. We've heard about the wave and the particle state of light.
Exactly.
When light travels through a vacuum, it's not a particle, it becomes a wave.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes a particle when it enters a strong magnetic field of a body such as a planet Earth, or the moon, or the sun. This is why you go outside into space. On the space shuttle, they pan the cameras out into deep space. You don't see any stars.
No.
But if they put a block shield over the sun, so you just see the corona, you pan the camera towards the corona, now for space around the sun you see stars. You're seeing the wave light going through the sun's magnetic field being converted to particulate light. Apparently the distance from the sun to the earth, or where they are in the space shuttle, is not enough to disperse the particles, and you still see the stars. Now, what is apparent and very evident to anyone who studies magnetic fields is that the Earth's magnetic field is getting weak over the last 20 to 50 years. And also the poles are actually retreating to the center of the planet. It used to be we had an angle of about 20 degrees below the horizon to locate magnetic north.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to an angle about like that to locate magnetic north.
Amazing. So there's a shift.
The pole is shifting practically to right under our feet, where we are in the northern hemisphere.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is suggesting at some point it's going to be, to the center, and the poles are going to cancel. At that point, we're going to have zero magnetic field.
And we're going to be in trouble then.
We're going to be in big trouble because there's evidence that says the Akashic record is held in place by the magnetic field, and our long-term memory is based upon the Akashic record. For long-term recall, we read the Akashic record, most human beings. Also...
Well, didn't you say that if that happens, then we're going to lose our long-term memory?
Yes.
It's going to disappear.
Mm-hmm.
So then what we're going to be left with is sort of living in the moment and what is happening right now, because we
Right.
won't have any memory of what did happen.
Right. Now,
So-
the other thing that's going to happen is we're going to go into a dark period. If the magnetic field goes to zero, we're not going to have any particulate light. We'll have only wave light. And our eyesight sensors, the rods and cones, are designed to pick up particulate light, not
I
wave
see.
light. Back in 1600, 1640, 1650, it is recorded in the history book by the ancient brothers in the monasteries that we had 18 days or 12 days of darkness, total darkness, except it was like twilight. Now, this is when we just skirted through the edge of the Marshall Belt. I'm told we're going into the center of the Marshall Belt this time, and we're starting to go into it right now, which is a possibility of why these big magnets are placed all around the country, pointing up at the sky, and they're pulsing these magnets. I've been tracking this for about the last week.
And pulsing magnets would indicate...
It appears that they're trying to maintain the magnetic field, is what I've noticed. After they go through a series of pulses, they shut it all down, and the Earth's magnetic field stays up at a higher point for a few hours.
So it sustains for a little while.
Yeah. So it looks like they're looking for modalities to keep the Earth's magnetic field sustained. So when we go into this Marshall Belt, we don't get a dark time, and we don't get the panic. See, you got to realize the government does not want to lose control. That's their main motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And for them not to lose control, we don't want to go into an anarchistic situation.
And that could very likely happen.
Yes, if you go into total darkness during the 1640s, 1650s, people rioted at that time. That's why it was called the Dark Ages.
Yes, and well, also, my understanding about the Dark Ages was also that there was such a lack of information that was available. It was almost kept away from the people.
Mm-hmm.
But I was not aware that the Dark Ages indicated that this, well, was that indicated also because of this magnetic field in 1650?
Well, we didn't get a
I want to
magnetic
kind
pole
of tie
shift.
that with that.
No, we didn't get a pole shift.
Uh-huh.
We may have had a pole reduction.
Mm-hmm. When was the last time that there was a pole shift?
37,000 years ago when Atlantis fell.
I see. And so you feel that that was the cause of that?
It's highly possible.
That's intriguing. It's very intriguing. So the government is trying to do what it can to reduce the amount of aggression in the American people, or even globally. Globally, because this is not just a single issue for us at home here.
No.
This
is planet-wide.
Planetary. So what we really ought to be watching for, what could somebody do to prepare themselves for such an event?
Well, if this happens, your key remembrance is remember how to read.
Remember how
Take
to read.
the book and read it constantly through this period to keep refreshing your physical memory so you know how to read.
Oh my.
Now, when the magnetic field returns, the Akashic record is going to rebuild. So when you pick up the books that have all knowledge in them, as you read that book, you're going to be rewriting that knowledge into the record.
I see.
So it means if you maintain your reading skill, remember, your short-term memory is a register. You got to keep refreshing it. So if you keep the reading skill alive in your short-term memory, when the magnetic field does return, you can go to that library and read, all the people can read all the books in the library and reinstitute the Akashic record.
Through consciousness.
Through reading.
Through reading.
No, whenever you think a thought, that thought is recorded in the Akashic record.
Exactly. So that is sort of like using the computer as a modality to compare with. We're looking at the hard drive is going to go, in essence, and so what we're going to do is have to go with the
keep the RAM refreshed.
Keep the RAM refreshed, and continue the reading. I think that's important.
The mistake that was made during the time of Atlantis is they did not know enough. The people did not know enough to maintain their reading skill and to refill the record with the information that's in the books of the day. If you go in the library, all the knowledge that you need is in those books. You just have to be able to read it, understand it, and implement it. And our society would not have a downfall at that point.
That is really incredible. Well, what else could an individual do besides reading to maintain some semblance of order in their lives? As
long as you don't panic over the darkness, as long as you don't get concerned as to what's happening because of the darkness and go into a panic, at that point you'll fill the register with just panic, absolute panic. You don't want to do that.
So we're still dealing with this fear aspect of overcoming fear.
Yep.
Myself, I'm working on being fearless, because I recognize that if I'm fearless, then I'm flat when something is presented to me that could be fearful. And I find a great deal of strength in that for myself. So if I continue on this course of continuing to be fearless and conquering and reading and knowing, then I should be able to survive this. So we need to...
Everybody can survive it.
And everyone can. So I'd just like to encourage my viewers to engage in reading.
The other things you have to prepare yourself for is there's going to be a food shortage.
Food shortage.
And there's going to be a water shortage.
And a water shortage.
Now, we don't know what's going to happen with the heat from the sun. So, and there's also a lot of information, a lot of channel sources pointing that we're going to have low heat, we have no electricity. Now, the only electricity will come from batteries, chemically generated electricity. Don't rely on magnetics. So that means have non-electric lights, non-electric heat. You know, as if you have a oil burner, that oil burner needs electricity to run the motor and the spark coil. Have the type of heat where maybe it's gas heat and there's no electrical operation in it at all. You light it by hand with a match. In other words, don't rely on electricity because you may not have electricity through this period. And when electricity comes back, we don't know if all the motors are going to turn backwards.
Wow,
You know,
that would be a
when the
surprise.
North and South Pole switch.
That could be a big surprise.
Yes.
So then they wouldn't work
Mm-hmm.
because they'd be generating back into itself. Wow. Well, this is very interesting, Preston.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting knowledge. Is there? We just have a few moments left. What else would you like to share with us?
Well, essentially, there's been a lot of work out of Montauk. It appears that they're trying to seal up the underground so possible congressional investigators won't find an entrance to the underground. There also has been an accident out at Montauk where the central part of the underground, the central core, got flooded. We're still trying to find out what that's about, as backed up by the big hole where the water came up and made mudslides that was noted by the overflights. And one of the Montauk boys recalled very recently diving in the underground to assess damage.
Interesting. Diving into now that's
Scuba
saying
diving.
through. Okay, so we're looking at the waters in the Atlantic out there as having an entrance underneath that they could swim through into the base, is what you're saying.
Well, it sounds like something broke and the underground got flooded.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. Preston, we're going to have to do this another time because obviously we've touched on a lot of areas that could have greater exploration, but it's certainly been a very interesting time with you, and I'm so grateful that you were able to come out here to the West Coast to share your knowledge with us.
Okay.
And I would like to invite my viewers to join us next time on Evolving Ideas. I'm ELAINE SMITHA.